welcome back to the Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast, your hub for everything off-road, dual sport, and adventure motorcycle. My name is John. I'll be your host, and here we are, episode number 6 of our podcast. Just want to thank you guys. Love to see all those reviews on iTunes, and again, you can catch us on iTunes, you can catch us on Stitcher, you can catch us on Google Play Music, and all of the podcasts are available on our website, www.benmotorcycleadventures.com. Really stoked about the guest we have on tonight, Mr. Garrett Ortiz, ADVLITE.com, your go-to page for lightweight dual sport adventure builds, gear info, product reviews, tutorials, and ride reports. Again, that is ADVLITE.com. Go check out the website. A lot of good information, a lot of cool stuff on there. Garrett also helps to manage a very large Facebook group for SoCal dual sport riders. If you live in SoCal, if you're a dual sport guy, you probably need to check that Facebook group out. They can point you in the right direction for a great ride. They can help you out with your bike problems, whatever the case may be. Check them out. Now, the focus of our interview tonight with Garrett was really centered around the famous LA to Barstow to Las Vegas ride. I believe this was the 35th year running this particular event. Garrett himself has been a number of times, so he provides a lot of insight, tips, and we just get to hear about his experience on this particular adventure. So I think without further ado, I'm going to cut away to our interview. And again, I thank you guys for joining us. Yeah, so I figured tonight we'd talk about LA to Barstow to Vegas. And if you want to talk about your website, AdventureLite, or anything like that, definitely go through that or whatever you want to chat about. But I know there's a lot of people out there like me that wish they would have went to the ride this year. So, and
have you done it? Have you done it before?
I've never done it, and I could have did it this year, and I just opted to sit home. So that was the stupidest thing I ever did. But
yeah, it's a good time. I mean, you want to definitely try and get some buddies together to do it with. It makes it more enjoyable, I think, because you get to share those stories that come out of it. But yeah, you got to do it at least once. It was on my bucket list to do, and I did it my first time in 2017. Okay. And it was great. And then this year it was even better because more buddies did it, and you just have endless stories to tell about the 500-mile journey across the Mojave Desert. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, no, most of us up here have never been down in the Mojave, and like I said, we had the luxury of seeing people ride it on social media and wish we had gone. I'm sure it would have been a lot better with rain, but yeah. You said it was 500 miles?
Yeah, it's about 500. If you do all the hard routes, it comes about to 500 miles.
Okay.
Now it's over 2 days. So your first day is about 210 miles. Your second day is like 280. 200, okay. 270, something like that. But I mean, it's definitely you got to keep moving. If you don't keep moving, it's going to get dark on you, and then it's going to really suck. Especially if you don't have like a time set up or something.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's a short time of the year, and I don't care where you're riding. That's 280. That's a long day on the bike. So, yep. Not a lot of time to stop and take photos and stuff.
No, definitely not.
So obviously the ride is in the Mojave, but for those of us who've never been down there and done the ride, what should we expect from the type of terrain we might see on this ride?
So there's a good mix of everything, actually. It's the desert, so there's a lot of sand. There's, just top sand in some sections. Then there's the deep, deep sand. There's sand washes that go on for 11 miles of the deepest sand you'll probably ever see in your life. And then there's, on the second day, there's some canyon riding where you're going up to about 6,000 feet. You start down in the lower desert, maybe around 1,000 feet or so, and then you climb up to 6,000, hitting washes, boulder fields, and in some sections it's kind of like a hard enduro.
Nice.
And it's kind of a mix of everything, which is the cool part. So
Right on. I was curious, if you were kind of a beginner or entry level dual sport rider, do you think that level or that skill of rider could make it easily?
That's a complicated question. I mean, by beginner level dual sport rider, I mean, do they have experience riding in sand?
Yeah, maybe that might be too broad of a question, but
yeah, because I mean, depending on the rider, I mean, if they're comfortable riding in deep sand, I mean it's deep, then yes, that's fine. They'll do okay. The hardest part about the ride is probably on the easy route. It's probably just the deep sand. That's the hardest part of the ride. On the hard routes, the hardest part of the ride is probably Red Rock Canyon or Last Chance Canyon, and those are Red Rock Canyon's mostly like rocks and boulders and such. Last Chance Canyon is a mixture of really deep sand washes and boulders that are in the middle of the sand wash. Nice. And then some waterfalls that you have to climb up in Last Chance Canyon. But I mean, overall, I mean, if you've been riding dual sport for a couple of years and you're confident with your sand ability, then I think you'll be just fine.
Okay. How much pavement's on the route?
So I would say pavement is less than 5 to 10%, like around 5 to 10%. Yeah, it's not very much. The only pavement you really hit is at the beginning. There's maybe about 5 to 10 miles of pavement, and then once you head into Barstow on the first day, you hit pavement for like maybe 5 miles into Barstow. And then in the morning when you leave on the second day, you hit about maybe 10 miles of pavement. And then at the end of the ride, it's about another 5-10 miles of pavement you hit. So yeah, probably like 10% of the ride is pavement.
Yeah, that's pretty good, really.
Yeah. So
just curious, the name of the ride is obviously LA to Barstow to Vegas. Do you start at a hotel, or is there a staging area or somewhere where you kind of get things underway?
Yeah, great, good question. So for those listening that aren't aware of how LA Barstow to Vegas started, it was actually a race. And I think the race started back in the 60s. And you used to race from Barstow to Vegas. But, then politics start getting into things and they shut the race down. And then they made it an organized dual sport ride. But going back to your question, it starts in Palmdale, California, which is in LA County. Palmdale's about, I don't know, 35 miles north of LA, and it's in the high desert. It starts at Palmdale Supercycles dealership in Palmdale, and then you ride to Barstow on the first day, and that's where you end up on the first day. You stay the night in Barstow, and then you wake up early in the morning on Saturday, and then head to Vegas. So it's a 2-day ride. It's fun, like I said.
Okay. So from what I gather, it looks like you have the luxury of possibly having your gear transported to Barstow and then to Vegas. Is that correct?
It is, and that's included in the fee when you sign up. However, one of my buddies that I ride with, his son actually is in his truck and chases us, and he carries gas and all of our gear and such. So he transports it all for us. But yeah, if you're just coming out to do it yourself and you don't have a chase truck, they will transport it for you.
Okay. That brings up a good question for me. I'm usually limited to about 200 miles on a tank and without packing gas. Is there gas along the route if I come down and ride it solo or something?
Yeah. So there's gas. The longest distance between gas stops, if you're doing the hard route, is anywhere between 90 and 100 miles.
Okay.
The longest distance for the easy route is, I think, around 60 to 70 miles. It depends on the year. They change it up every year, but on average. So there's always gas stops. I mean, my bike, Beta 500, gets about a little over 100 miles per tank. I have a 3-gallon tank. But some people can get much farther. Some of the adventure bikes, obviously.
Okay. Sounds like it's set up to where we can pretty much bring any dual sport for the most part and not have any issue making it point to point.
Yeah.
So what's the layover like in Barstow? Is it just a big party with a bunch of motorcycle riders or what?
Yeah. So when you roll into Barstow, we rolled in on the first day at about, I think it was 3:30 or so. We left Palmdale at about 7:30. So from 7:30 to 3:30, that was our day. When you roll into Barstow, though, it's pretty cool. If you've ever been to like a Supercross race or something like that, you know how you hear the bikes on the starting line and everyone's revving up and getting ready to go. Well, when you're arriving in Barstow, it's kind of the same thing. Everyone's like super excited to be there because the day's over. Not just because people are exhausted and they're just pumped to be there.
Sure.
And so everyone's revving their bikes up and stuff. And then you go through along the route each day. There's checkpoints that you have to hit, and the organizers mark down your number that's on the front of your bike once you get to a checkpoint, so that no riders left behind, and so they know who's still out on the trail. So when you get to Barstow, they do that as well to make sure they close you out for the day. And then you go through this little like tent type thing. They sign you off, and then they have you go pick up your GPS coordinates or tracks for the next day. And then you pick up your roll chart too. And then everyone kind of does their own things. Some people hang out, get some beers. Other people go out and get dinner and then call it an early night like I did. It's there's actually there's mechanics that are in the parking lot of the Ramada Inn. That's the hotel that it takes place at. And that way, if anyone has any issues with their bikes, the mechanics are able to work on them there. Tire issues. My buddy had his tire actually blow out, and so he was able to buy a new tire and have it mounted right there. The vendors that were helping out, which
sounds like cool. Sounds like my kind of ride.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The Ramada Inn, the situation with laying over in Barstow, that's not included in the price, right? You would need to reserve your own room.
Yes, yeah, you need to book early too. That the group buy room rates like $99 for the night on Friday night, and you reserve your room. A lot of people reserve their room for the next year, the day after they arrive in Barstow. Just so they have a spot. I mean, the rooms fill up really quick. So it's Barstow too. I don't know if you've ever been to Barstow before, but it's kind of a sketchy area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little bit. So when you arrive on on Friday evening or Friday afternoon, you put there's a place everyone keeps their bikes, and the Boy Scouts actually watch your bikes overnight. You give them a small donation of like $10, and they watch all the bikes, and you'll see I have a picture I posted on ADVLITE Instagram that shows that, so everyone kind of get a feel for it. But there's literally 600 bikes in this dirt lot, and the Boy Scouts stay up all night watching the bikes to make sure no one takes them.
That's very cool. Which brings me to my next thing. Now, this isn't just it's just not just a dual sport ride because we want to go out there and ride. This is for a good cause too, right?
Yeah. So Toys for Tots is what a lot of the basically each rider either has to donate $10 to go towards the Toys for Tots, or they have to bring a toy that's $10 or more. And so those all get, at the end of the ride, the check, and then any toys are given to the Toys for Tots Foundation.
Interesting. Any idea how much was donated this year by any chance?
Yeah, it was, I think, I want to say it was like $6,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In cash, and then there was a bunch of toys. So it was a decent amount.
That's really good. Killer event with a good cause behind it. Love to hear about that.
Yeah.
That last day, riding into Vegas, is there any sort of closing ceremony or anything like that on day 2?
Yeah, so coming into Vegas is even better than going into Barstow, because the second day it just kicks your ass. It's pretty brutal. I mean, there's sections on the second day, the first part of the second day which are really rocky. If you're doing the hard section, there's you go through a canyon, and you've probably seen some videos. You're going through like big waterfall step ups and some hard enduro stuff there. And then as you make your way towards Vegas, there's some really fast, wide open sections. I mean, there's sections where I was probably hitting close to 70 in the sand washes. It's so much fun too. And then you get past that section, your big stop on the first day is you start in Barstow, and then you ride 90 miles to Baker. And some people might be familiar with Baker because it has that big thermometer. And it's the world's tallest thermometer. So you stop. That's one of the checkpoint areas. Between Barstow and Baker, I mean, there's so many different types of terrain: rocks, deep sand washes that you'll never ever experience as far as deepness of sand. I mean, and it goes on for miles. And then you have some just regular desert roads that are all chewed up by the side-by-sides, if you're familiar with what those are.
Oh, yeah, we've got them around here.
Yeah, they just tear up the desert. And then you're into Baker. We take usually about a 30-minute break in Baker, get gas, and then we head out from Baker to Sandy Valley, Nevada. And then that's where you eat lunch. It's actually at the elementary school there. It's a tiny little town, and the lunch is all provided for with your entrance fee. They had pulled pork, I think, sandwiches, cookies, and like macaroni salad. It's pretty good. When you get into that area or to that school, there's actually a tanker truck to fill up your bike with about 1.5 gallons of gas. And that 1.5 gallons of gas is supposed to get you the rest of the way to Vegas. And that's all included in your fee as well.
Cool.
And then once you go to park your bike to eat, right before you park your bike, there's firefighter volunteers that are rinsing off your wheels and fenders because they don't want any of the the seeds from California, the invasive species,
Sure.
coming into Nevada, into Red Rock Canyon. And so they rinse your bike off with a hose, and then you go ahead and eat lunch for about 30 minutes, and then you're on your last leg from Sandy Valley. If you take the hard route, you go through Red Rock, and then into Vegas.
Okay. And closing ceremonies there or anything like that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. So once you get out of Red Rock Canyon, you take Pavement for about 10 miles, and that's where all of the hooligan stuff really starts happening, because everyone's on Pavement. You know, you're pumped because you're almost to Vegas. Me and my other buddy were busting wheelies down Tropicana Avenue.
Nice.
Probably shouldn't have been, but it's just a fun time. So we get into it's the Orleans. That's where you end at, the Orleans Hotel, and it's in the parking garage. They have one of those tents that you go through. They check your number. They check you off that you showed up. And then you go and take a picture with the showgirls with your bike, which is kind of fun. And after that, around 6:30, they have a closing ceremonies banquet type thing. And they do raffles based off your rider number. And then also you have the opportunity to purchase raffle tickets. And they have so much cool stuff. I mean, they have everything from brake rotors to, Icon gear, suits, all the good stuff. So they do a really good job getting a lot of the sponsors together to help provide some good stuff for all of the riders.
That's cool. Sounds like a really nice way to close out an otherwise epic event. So good to hear. Last question for me as far as LA to Barstow to Vegas. For those of us who've never been, what are your thoughts? What are your tips, recommendations, for setting up your bike or just coming down and being prepared for this ride?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is just make sure you know how to ride sand. Because everyone thinks, oh, it's just a regular dual sport ride, and no big deal. It's not. I mean, it's not a difficult ride if you know how to ride a bike by any means, but it's something that people underestimate how deep sand can actually get, and it can come up and bite you sometimes. So I would say know how to ride sand. Make sure you have whatever you need to fix any type of flats. I run tubeless. I recommend tubeless because if you do get a flat, you can just plug it. And then you have really good traction in the sand too at lower pressures. Saddlebags. I personally run the Giant Loop Mojave saddlebags, but you want to make sure you have all your necessary tools. I have my beta toolkit that I got with my bike, and then I carry a tube just in case my tubeless was to fail. And then a few other things, zip ties, first aid kit, all that good stuff in the saddlebags. And then I always keep a couple canisters of fuel in my Giant Loop Possibles pouch, just because you never know if you're going to run into somebody that ran out of gas, or if you run out of gas yourself. If you get lost, you never know when you might need a little extra fuel. It doesn't weigh very much. They're only like 30-ounce canisters, and I have 2 of them. That's pretty much it. You do need a roll chart holder.
Okay.
If you've never used a roll chart before, it's pretty easy to use. And then I recommend having a GPS. My Beta came with a Voyager GPS, and so I use that. But any Garmin or anything like that, and the GPS tracks are all included when you sign up. So the organizers say to follow the roll chart, because it has, the roll chart's very comprehensive. It tells you when there's washouts coming up. It tells you of any type of hazards that are coming up. Whereas the GPS, just shows that line, doesn't show any of that. the dangerous stuff that's coming up. So the organizers say to follow your roll chart and use the GPS as an aid. But some people just follow the GPS, and then some people just follow the roll chart. I'm horrible at following the roll chart because I forget to turn it. So I'll usually follow somebody that's using the roll chart, and then I'll be good to go.
Okay. Yeah, I'll throw a link up in the show notes for this for those of you who don't know what a roll chart holder is. The hardest thing for me with roll charts is taping my chart in there. But
yep,
that's good to know. And then again, people, the sand is no joke. We have a little bit of sand around here. We obviously have the dunes on the Oregon coast, and we have some volcanic black sand bowls that are pretty deep. But I went on a ride a couple of years ago for 3 days in Urrington, Nevada. I think it was about an hour south of Reno.
Okay.
And I've never experienced sand washes of that length. We have them around here, but 5-6 miles, we're just running through these gnarly sand washes. And like you said, 40, 50 miles an hour. So it's it's definitely a unique experience, not something that we would run into up here in Oregon for the most part.
Yeah, the sand washes are my favorite. I love sand washes. You probably know, riding a big bore, it's just a blast to haul ass through a sand wash. In 2017, there was a sand wash on the hard route that was 11 miles, and it was pretty deep. And by the time you're done with it, your arms you have arm pump and all this other stuff because you're trying to hold on loose to the bars, but at the same time you don't want to hold on too loose and let go. So it's it's the ruts and everything in the sand throwing you from one direction to another. So steering stabilizer might be helpful too.
Yeah, and I would imagine with all the people riding through the sand, if you're bringing up the rear somewhere out there, it's probably pretty tore up too. So.
Oh yeah, ruts crossing. You just gotta go fast, and you'll usually be okay.
Lean back and pin it.
Yep.
Okay, that kind of wraps up my thoughts or my questions about LA Barstow to Vegas, and the website for that is labarstowvegas.com. I don't see anything on there yet for 2019, but you might take heed to what Garrett has said. You might look into reserving a room or digging in and see if you can find any more information for the 2019 ride. Personally, I think I'll do like you said. Let's try to get a group from the Pacific Northwest to come down and ride together and see if we can get somebody to chase for us too. It looks like that is a nice way to go. Garrett, anything to add on anything to add on ADVLITE or SoCal Dual Sport Riders, which you host a large Facebook group for?
Yeah. So ADVLITE, it's just lightweight adventure riding. In my opinion, adventure riding doesn't need to be on a big bike. I think even going out for the day is considered an adventure if you're exploring new territory. And I think a lot of us would rather be on a lighter bike than a big, heavy bike. But that's kind of what ADVLITE's all about, just lightweight dual sport adventures. We do some product reviews, tests, stuff like that too. I personally seek out those products that are innovative and that are going to help the sport advance into the future. So if you're into stuff like that, definitely check us out. SoCal Dual Sport Riders. It's a Facebook group. We have about 6,000 members, a little over 6,000 members now, and predominantly all from Southern California. We share rides. We share, pictures. We help each other with mods. Any questions on how to fix your bike? A lot of stuff on there. And then one of the big things is we work with a lot of vendors who help support the community and provide the community discounts and support. And it's just basically we have it set up so that everyone benefits, both the members and the vendors. So it's a sweet group. Feel free to check it out. We vet it pretty heavily, meaning if you're not in the Southwest region typically. We we need a pretty good reason to add people, but if shoot me a message, and I'd be happy to show you guys the group and see if we can figure something out. So
Sure, and a couple good points there. I think I more than anything these days from Facebook, the value I get is from groups like this, either regionally or like my KTM 500 group. If I have a question about something, like literally 2 minutes after I post the question on Facebook, somebody chimes in with an answer and we kind of start to walk down the road or the solution. So those types of groups are really helpful these days. And then also with ADVLITE, I noticed you recently did a review on the Giant Loop zigzag handlebar bag.
yeah,
That I have one of those. Sometimes you need a little more storage, right? You don't want to go crazy or buy bigger saddlebags. I love that little handlebar bag. And then for carrying gas, I was going to chime in and say, hey, I have the Giant Loop, one of their gas bags, and that thing's awesome. Rolls up really small if you don't have any gas in it. That's also another means for transporting fuel on a long ride.
yep, absolutely. And that's actually going to be probably one of my next purchases is that 1 gallon gas bag. Because you're right, it just keeps it all in a nice compact package, and it's easy to tie down too. So
Yeah.
good points.
Ties in very good with the luggage. And then I had a stretch where I needed to go 245 miles with no services kind of out here in northeastern Oregon. So I filled it up and dumped it in my tank when the time was right, and no issues. So it's nice to have products like that. So
Yep, absolutely. Innovative products like that are what are going to continue to push the sport forward. So
for sure. All right, Garrett, anything else you'd like to add before you go? I want to thank you for coming on. Really awesome conversation, and it's good to have you.
yeah, no, check out ADVLITE, check out SoCal Dual Sport Riders. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send me a private message on Facebook. Or ADVLITE, and I'd be happy to answer them for you.
All right, guys, that is just about going to do it for another episode of the Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast. Again, I want to thank Garrett for coming on. ADVLITE.com is his website. That's your go-to page for lightweight dual sport adventure builds, gear info, product reviews, tutorials, and ride reports. ADVLITE.com. Don't forget about his Facebook page or Facebook group, SoCal Dual Sport Riders. If you're a SoCal guy or girl, you've got a dual sport, you should probably get connected with that group. Interested in the next LA to Barstow to Vegas or LA Barstow to Vegas ride? LABarstow2Vegas.com. I am confident they will start to populate that site with information about the 2019 ride soon. And I hope to see you guys, and I hope to see Garrett down there next year. It looks like an amazing event, an exciting event, and one that's for a good cause. So I'm looking forward to going in 2019. I can't believe I didn't go this year. Totally could have went. BenMotorcycleAdventures.com if you want to check out show notes from this podcast or any previous podcast, if you want to take a look at the adventures and tours we provide, if you want to look for a little bit of knowledge and some tips, BenMotorcycleAdventures.com. Again, interested in the podcast, click that blog link in the upper right-hand corner and you will be treated to every podcast episode and every blog post that I have ever made. As far as social media goes, at Ben Motorcycle Adventures on Instagram and Facebook. Love to interact with you guys on both of those platforms. And as far as podcasts are concerned, whatever medium, whatever directory, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, however you listen, make sure you click subscribe so that you are treated to the very next podcast as soon as it releases. And speaking of that very next podcast, super excited. Speaking of ADVLITE and lightweight adventure builds and lightweight adventure riding, I've got a guest coming on next week who just got back from Mexico. I believe he said he rode 2,200 miles down there on a KTM 500. He also uses WR250s for lightweight adventure. He's ridden in Utah on the BDR twice. He's ridden on the Colorado BDR twice. He's been down to Patagonia. So this guy is a seasoned motorcycle adventurer, drops a ton of knowledge, talks to us about safety and things like that. Very excited to have him on. So I think that'll do it, guys. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for listening, and we will catch you next week.